State your name and your occupation.
Sandra Thompson, I'm an attorney as well as president of the York NAACP.
What's your main concern with the charter school takeovers?
Well, the main concern is where, as people say that the takeover will yield to choice in schools, my concern is it's really going to take it away. The fact that they're trying to solve the issues of the lack of funding in York City School District by giving it over to corporations who have a track record and history of just seeking to make money off of education.
Explain what you believe the main differences are between the charter school and the public school.
Well, the main difference is, I would say, is the regulation of the traditional public schools. They have the oversight for the school board, the leaders, or the people who are supposed to be leading the school district. They are elected by the people and the people that they serve, whereas the charter schools administrators, they're coming in from other states. They're outside of their community. They are not chosen or elected by the people. There is no real regulation over charter schools in general. Whereas a lot of what is done in public schools must be publicized, their budgets, their expenditures. For charter schools, a lot of their finances and what they're doing with their finances and how much they're paying their administrators and their management companies are able to be kept private at present. So that's the concern. The concern is doing some research even on the current charter proposals, Mosaica, as well as Charter School USA. They have, in their current states where they are, they've lost contracts and they walked away from contracts, and there's already been controversy over the fact of how much money they're making. And again, in a financially strapped district already, and it's from the same financial resources from the taxpayers. So you take the same funding stream and the only funding stream, take it from the public schools and then give it to private companies whose goal is to make a profit. And then believe that they're going to do a better job at education. I think that's a fallacy. So, there's already, as I said, controversy in their areas where they currently are over the fact that how much money that they make. Another way that they make money is continuously open up schools. So, and then they buy the buildings and rent out the buildings. The management companies buy the buildings and rent out the buildings to the school district. And they charge rent of at least 20% of the budget. So again, if you're now all of a sudden you own the buildings of the school district and now you have to pay rent to a management company, that's taking away money from the students and from education.
One of the biggest people that seemed to turn a profit in this town with the opening of charter schools was Isaiah Anderson. And the biggest thing that you just said about running and renting the schools is something that happened with the New Hope and was the reason why the charter wasn't renewed. What do you feel about him and his effective leadership as far as the way that the schools are being run?
I cannot speak to him personally because I did not do an analysis of him personally, nor did I do one of New Hope in general. Now, I did maybe a couple of years ago when all that controversy was going on, I did research from the Department of Education the AYP results of the various local schools, and I do know that New Hope was on the lower end of that. I'm just hearing controversy in the community about that. I mean, there's pros and cons, and that's the issue as well that I see, in the local community. Parents want that hope. Parents want their children to succeed or at least have the appearance of success. And I think that, again, from the comments that I heard, is that whereas if grades are padded so that a student coming from the public schools, traditional public schools, who was normally making a C, D, or F, is now transferred to the charter school, and all of a sudden, this is an A and B student, then that will make parents happy. But then that would also qualify them because colleges look at the underlying grade. So that would also qualify them for entry into colleges and as well as potential scholarships. So again, that's what parents see. But then when the students get into these colleges and they can't write a basic sentence or write a basic report or paper, the things that they should have learned to earn those A's and B's, then they typically fail out of school. So that is the problem with padding grades and making your statistics look good, whereas the children aren't really learning. And also, I just want to say also that doing the research, even on these couple of charter schools that are coming in, especially pointing to Mosaica, there have been as well the same type of controversies of teaching for the test. So that's all you're really teaching, and sometimes there also have been controversies where they gave the test to the students in advance. Sort of gave them the actual test to say this is a practice, which you're not supposed to do. Is cheating is illegal. So they pad their numbers, and when you don't have the oversight with the charters like you do with the traditional, you have more opportunity for them to do that, and then you have parents again who are just looking at the scores where they did score lower before, now they're scoring higher, therefore I believe my child is doing better, when in reality they're not, and that's proven when they really try for a higher education or a step up in life.
In New Hope and the Impact Academy, it was two schools that one was run by Isaiah Anderson and the other one is currently, that's still open. They feel as though the discipline is the way to teach children right from wrong. They use military forms of discipline to teach the kids when they're out of line. Do you feel that that's an effective way to reach a student?
Again, I cannot specifically speak to that because I'm not aware of it. Now, when you say military discipline, tell me more of an example.
More or less, they're made to speak in cadences, marching up and down the hallway, line formations.
Well,
like something you would see in boot camp, basically, like a basic training type mentality for the students if they're out of line.
I can tell you, I cannot specifically speak to that. I do believe in discipline. I don't really have a problem with discipline, but there are some things that I do have a problem with, and that's indoctrinating our children to be used to prison life or being around police or encountering police or being subjected to searches, that type of thing, which I think that contributes to the school to prison pipeline. So and that's why, one, I have made the statement that when this all came up, and this was a couple of years ago when the CRO, Meckley, and the school district had to make the decision of whether to go all charter 2 or so years ago, or follow the internal plan what the York City School District was proposing. Through NAACP, we presented them a program of saner, safer schools. And that is to say that to deal with disciplinary problems, you have to recognize and address the underlying trauma issues. And a lot of that is, one, if I'm hungry, I haven't eaten, maybe since the last time I was in school for lunch, then feeding them is one. Two, I'm worried about my parent who may be on drugs. I'm worried about my parent who's just unemployed. I'm worried about the fact that I have to hurry up home and I have to babysit my 2 younger siblings. I'm worried about the fact that within the city, when I go to sleep at night, I'm hearing gunshots. I'm worried about the fact that my friend or my relative or my classmate was just killed. All those are known statistically, nationally, to cause trauma and defects in learning abilities. So that is what we encourage all school districts, and especially York City School, when they're saying, how do we address our problems? How do we address our issues? To incorporate not discipline per se, but more counseling to address those underlying issues, to remove the barriers to learning. And unfortunately, and again, this is something I've been very vocal against, not against the people that are in the position, but the positions themselves of the school police. That the fact that the school police doesn't solve those problems. So if it's something, I went to boot camp. Boot camp itself can give you more discipline. So that itself, depending on how it's run, just by name, I may not have a problem with it. But again, if it's from the patting the students down, the random searches, the treating them like criminals, that is what I believe I have a problem with. Even the old time, personally, even the old time spankings in school, I don't have a real problem with, because when I grew up in school and there was more discipline, and the teachers actually were your second parents sometimes, and there were things that they were able to say to you and mentored you in love, and that made a difference. So on that issue, it all depends on how it's applied. But I'm definitely against anything to put in a student's mind that could be preparation for prison versus college versus business school or any other type of step up in life.
At the charter presentation that they had in August, they spoke a lot about broken homes and what they feel that the community needs to fix the problem. They just spoke a little bit, but what do you feel is the biggest problem in community involvement in the public schools?
With community involvement, well, there's a few things there. I think, and it goes both ways, because being with York NAACP, I know of a lot of community groups, including ours, who have reached out to the school district. So when you speak about community organizations, there are many community organizations, grassroots community organizations, and held by people of color who want to or are dying to go into the school district. The issue has been the response back from the school district. A lot of times phone calls are not returned, or they don't always encourage students to attend, or the information is not really shared so that there is a good representation of students in the programs. And the reality is, when a person is volunteering their time, you will only do so many times with an empty class. So, that's just a straight reality. But so that is where it's both ways. The school district must be more responsive. And again, if they had more counselors versus police, if they would invested in that, then I think that would have or free people up to return phone calls, to set up after school programs or speakers or mentors within the school district, which there are community members who want to do. Now, in reference to the parents' involvement, again, I hear it both ways. The school saying that they send notices home in the kids' book bag and maybe the kids take it out. So it's up to the schools to continue to try. They cannot stop and say, I've tried and it doesn't work, so I'm not doing it again. You have to continue to do it, continue to do it, continue to do it. And for the parents, they have to take a more active interest in their children. It's not just sending them off to school and asking them, is everything okay, or hoping that everything is okay, but having that, attending parent-teacher conferences, talking to their student as well, and if something doesn't sound right, following up with principals and superintendents and the school board. Attend the school board meetings. A lot of times I think parents believe they don't have the power because sometimes they've been told so much that they don't, but they do. So, and keep pushing, even if they think they're going to hit a wall, even if they think they're going to hear a no. Keep pushing and be that advocate for their child, because if they as the parent are not the advocate, then who else is? So unless somebody else steps in. There was something else I wanted to answer in that question. I know. The other thing is what we have been trying to encourage the school district all of these presentations that's coming in from the charter schools, they have not said one thing that this school district cannot accomplish. The school district just has to do it. That's all. They have to assign importance to it, because when we spoke to them a couple of years ago about the trauma, they said they recognized it, but then, as I said, they brought in police. So when the charters are coming in and say that they create panels, or they create committees that include the student, the administrators, the teacher in the community, the school district can listen to that and apply it themselves.
In the city itself, the current administration has kind of stayed kind of neutral, like not trying to play one side or the other. With them being so quiet, what do you feel is going to be the biggest impact if this actually happens?
If it happens, well, we're hoping that won't happen. So we're still fighting so that it won't happen, and we'll try to fight it if it does continue to happen and try to get it overturned. But, you know, the reality is the reason why people stay quiet is because they don't commit themselves. And if it wins or loses, they haven't commit themselves. So that way, whatever happens on the end, they can say that's what they were for all along. That's what normally politics is about. But I'm thankful that Kevin Shriver, state representative, has spoken out against this endeavor. He is for the traditional public schools. And Tom Wolf, who is a candidate for governor, has spoken out. Linda Small, who's candidate for state senate, she's spoken out against it. So there are some politicians who are actually being vocal. And the other ones, if they're not saying anything from one side, then there's probably a reason for it. But if they were in favor of the public schools, then I think this is the time to say so.
Many of the staff will more, if this takeover fully does happen, many of the staff will likely be replaced, as well as some of the students will be moved if they're not accepted. What do you think impact that will have?
Well, that's the problem with it all, because their plan, and so far they're giving. Now, I'm going to tell you right now that there's a lot of confusion in their plan. I've spoken to several school board directors, and they had some confusion as to what the plan was. So some of the plan is, well, they may accept the proposal of a charter is just taking over one building, one school building, but it's my understanding they're giving preference, and that's why the push is toward 100% charter takeover. So if it's 100% charter takeover, there's no other place to go. So that's why we're saying there is no choice. So if these charters fail, then what are they going to do? That's the other thing. You have Mosaica, who's being sued in Atlanta. So it depends. So that's up in the air of what can happen with Mosaica, depending on that lawsuit. At least that's what a news report had reported. So what is the fallback to these children? You're totally dismantling a system for a hope. That's all they have, is a hope and a prayer for a new system. And if that new system fails, it will leave nothing. Because it will take time to rebuild, because as you said, once the city school district is terminated, all those teacher contracts are terminated. And so then now obviously, they're going to be soliciting those same teachers. They're going to say, oh, if you care about your students, you'll come work for us for probably about a third of what your prior salary was. Whether some teachers who are stuck in the area or committed to the area may stay, maybe for how long though, until they find something else. And what charter schools are typical and known for is hiring teachers right out of college, because they pay introductory salaries and don't have very many benefits, because a lot of the income really goes to the top heads. And that's why charter schools are also known for high turnover. And a part of the high turnover, reasons for the high turnover is low salaries and inconsistencies in management, inconsistencies in curriculum. So if a teacher doesn't know what they're supposed to do 1 week, 1 month out of a year, every time they turn around it's changing, not many who are quality are going to stay. And the other thing about that is if it's high turnover, then that means the students aren't building a bond with the teachers. If there's turnover in the curriculum, the students don't know what they're learning from week to week, month to month. So that is why, and I think that contributes to the fact that, especially in Pennsylvania and also nationally, charter schools have not done much better than traditional public schools. For majority of the charter schools, they've done worse in reading and math.
Many people feel they don't have a special education program set up and ELS programs in their schools. A lot of people feel that their children won't even be accepted into the schools if the majority of them don't have them. Do you know anything about that, one way or the other?
Well, that's the issue. Again, this is all trial and error, because most of the time when there are charter schools like this, you have the traditional public schools. So when the charter schools say they're filled and or they get close to being filled, and they do a lottery or something like that. But what happens when there is no public school like they're planning? So that's a huge question. I do know that, and again, when you say about the practice and the ratings of the existing charter schools in Pennsylvania, they don't do better for ESL or ELL students, English as a second language students. They don't do better for special ed students. Again, on average, they're doing worse than traditional public schools for those students. Charter schools are also said to, again, be the answer to the plight of poverty. Even in the poor areas and for poor students, they're not doing better than traditional public schools. Again, they're doing generally worse in reading and math. So that's why we're fighting this endeavor so strongly, because one is nothing but a huge question mark about everything. How is it going to be run? How successful can you be? How can you run it with the same amount of funds that they say was too little for them to run it without salaries themselves for administrators? And again, I mean the school board directors, who are the leaders, and they are the administrators compared to having a paid management company. So, so in the same funding source, you say you don't have enough funds to run it in the New York City School District, but yet you're going to take that money and give it to a private company to run the school district. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't even add up.
Any final thoughts or anything else you want to add that you can think of?
I think you covered it pretty well. Again, it's really, I thank you for engaging in this endeavor, because it's the education of the community. I mean, if you can get this out to educate the parents and inspire the parents to say, this doesn't make sense, and I don't want my child to be a guinea pig. I am concerned about my child's future. And just think, why is it always the poor communities? Why is it that they don't rush to go to suburban or the suburbanite communities to bring in these charter schools? If charter schools are so great, why aren't the predominantly white and predominantly affluent, richer communities asking for these charter schools to come in? So, and the fact that statistically they do not do much better, the fact that statistically the management companies are the ones that are making millions and millions of dollars off of your students, should say no to charter schools. That should encourage you to tell the school board to say no to charter schools. The fact that they acquire assets, that's the other thing, that we saw with New Hope, just using as an example, is that the assets that they acquire from computers, and then if any other charters acquiring buildings, real estate, all that becomes theirs. So theirs that they use to buy through public funds, sometimes grants as well. And because it's a private asset, when they sell it, it doesn't come back to the public. So that's where, if you know, whether you're a taxpayer and even as a renter, I heard a statement made by a school board director that, well, there's a petition that's going around to say no to these charter takeovers, these corporate takeovers. And so the school board director looked at the petition and said, well, these are mostly renters. Well, again, those renters should not be minimized. They should not be diminished because these are parents. They are living in the school district. They have children in the school district. And even renters, by paying their rent, are taxpayers. So all of you should be considered as contributing to the finances of York City School District and should come to the school board and say, vote no to this charter school endeavor.